Today's episode of the Cedric Phillips podcast is brought to you by Wizards of the Coast Organized Play, or perhaps Modern Horizons, or something else that is Magic related. Because that is what my guest and I, Matt Sperling, talked about at length today. We talked about a ton of stuff, honestly. We talked about his second place runner-up finish at Mythic Championship 2 in London. We talked about the state of organized play and how we should be looking at things, kind of piggybacking off of the conversation that Tommy Ashton and I had last week. Sperling brings a different point of view that is very nuanced and reasoned, and he's a very smart individual, just like Tommy was last week, and I threw in my 2 cents as necessary, and I think we had a really good and healthy discourse about the topic. I think you guys will enjoy that. And then after that, we did some conversations about the the Los Angeles Lakers and the state of things. Matt is from LA in California, and he's a huge Lakers fan. And so I got to get my jabs in when I can, since they're in turmoil and it's just a complete shit show out there in Lakerland. And then finally, we answered a couple of the questions that you find folks sent in on Twitter and Facebook before calling it quits. Sperling is always a great time to hang out with and chat with, and though I don't get to see him that much anymore because his travels do not coincide with my travels, you know what? The magic of technology and the internet means that we get to interact through this medium, and I'm glad we have the opportunity to do so. But before we get there, we, of course, will start with my friends over at Julevera, Julevera, the wonderful band that has their music on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and wherever else you do get your tunes. As usual, my podcast editor, Jonathan Choi, will play a track to lead things in, and then Sperling and I are going to riff off for a little more than an hour. And that's all I got for you. Enjoy the show. All right, everybody, welcome to another magic episode, that's a phone, of the Cedric Phillips podcast. I'm your host, Cedric Phillips. My phone is on silent now. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at that handle, and I am joined by a runner-up, I can't believe I'm going to say this, runner-up of a Mythic Championship in London. I was there for the PTQ that you won to qualify for this, Sperling.
Oh, yeah, you made the top 8 of that tournament.
I sure did.
But what a backhanded intro. I can't believe I'm saying this, but you did well in a tournament?
Look, I got to keep you on your toes, man. We got to make sure you're paying attention. Mr. Second Place over here.
Okay, all right.
Backdooring into the top 8, winning a PTQ, and now second place in the tournament. I love it. Affinity, an unorthodox choice. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point, but how the hell are you, man?
I'm good. It's not every day you can lose a $50,000 anti-match or whatever it was, but you got to be thankful for the opportunity to lose a match. That's that important.
I suppose that's true. I don't know if you've heard.
I was so delirious. I was so delirious from no sleep and and the whole whirlwind thing that I told Paul, I was like, yeah, I don't know. It was probably like 20 grand on the line. I didn't even realize that the cash difference was 30,000. And then it's like it queues for Worlds. Maybe you make the MPL, maybe not, whatever. So it was like, a 50K anti-match. But as reality set in, I really just couldn't be very disappointed. I just couldn't. I was super lucky to get there. I got lucky at a million different spots to get to be there. And so that was a fun weekend for sure.
Man, it's got to be tough to be unhappy to get second place in a Pro Tour or Mythic Championship, whatever we're calling them today on May 20th.
It's easy to be upset if that's your disposition. It's easy to be happy to be there if that's your disposition. I think there's, like I said, it's an interesting thing. It's like you did really well, but that's also you've never lost a match that's that important if you get there. So, anyways, I'm lucky to have the disposition where I'm just happy that things worked out the way they did.
So earlier today on Twitter, I posted the agenda of things we'll be discussing today, like the state of competitive Magic, you getting second place at MC London with Affinity, which Magic you're more sick of, the Gathering or Johnson, and I even have some questions from the audience. So I think we'll start with the MC because, Modern's starting to heat up a little bit with Modern Horizons and all that jazz. You played Affinity. like normal traditional not hardened scales affinity, and I got to know why that was the choice and if that deck is still good moving forward.
Yeah, it was the choice just by virtue of like playing matches on Magic Online, me and Paul eliminating decks and just trying a bunch of different stuff. I mean, we didn't try 5 decks, we didn't try 10 decks, we tried like a bunch of decks. And so eventually that just started winning. And I joined a league and go 4-1. And then I joined another league, go 4-1 again. And the other decks we were playing, there were just 2-3s and 3-2s aplenty.
I'm glad you've noted that you didn't go 5-0 because that's literally impossible.
No, we didn't have a 5-0. We were so many matches in before I finally got our first 5-0 with Affinity. That's when we actually locked in. That's when we were like, okay, we're going to lead pipe, lock it in, put my full dead hands, etc. But we didn't have a 5-0. I mean, the format was a puzzle to us. So many different things had changed with the Mulligan rule. Open deck list wasn't a thing on Magic Online. Although I remember one match, I was playing black-green, and I played like Swamp Thoughtseize, and then my opponent did something, and they were in the middle of making a decision. I typed into the chat, "I'm black-green control," to try to like replicate the experience that my opponents at the Pro Tour were going to know what I was playing. I played Meddling Mage. And so I just went like Inquisition, something ambiguous, and I typed in the chat like, "I'm black-green," like name Tarmogoyf, not bridge or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so it was a crazy thing to test for with all the different rules changes. But Affinity, there wasn't any kind of like laboratory. You know, we added 2 ounces of this, and then that's it's like, no, we just played, and then that's what was winning.
I mean, sometimes Affinity has a propensity to do that, and it was a deck that not many people were expecting, I'm sure, is you're over here playing Cranial Plating, which weirdly went from one of the best cards in the format to a card that was seeing actual 0 play. So I'm sure some of your constructed matches were pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, when I had to go backwards rationalize why the deck was winning, it's definitely the infrequency of the really punishing hate cards. There's a big difference between Fatal Push and Lightning Bolt and like Stony Silence and Shatterstorm and whatever else. And people were just having to play against humans so much. They're having to play against Tron so much. They weren't really finding room for like Kataki or something stupid, right? So you just not never, but you pretty rarely face the truly offensive hate cards. And then you could just, but with the Experimental Frenzy, you just didn't really care that much about the one for, even like an Ancient Grudge just wasn't that backbreaking if you're about to play a 10 for 1 or whatever. So it kind of made sense why the deck was winning, but we didn't get there via that wasn't like our ad hoc reason for picking the deck, but after the fact, it kind of looked like that's why it was winning.
Hey man, a win's a win. Whatever it takes to get them within reason works in my book. So
whatever sleeves you got to mark, whatever lands you got to untap. You know, do whatever it takes. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I mean, man. Get yourself some KMC nailbacks and really get to work. That's what you got to do. I only say that because you literally can't buy Ultimate Guard katanas. It's not possible. So get yourself some nailbacks and get to work. Open deck list. Did you like it?
Well, first of all, I'm proud of you. You made it into the 7th minute of the cast before getting to a katana name drop, product drop in there. But by the way, everyone should know, full transparency, Cedric is sending me a case of katana sleeves for my appearance on his podcast. Now, he doesn't know that until I mentioned it, but now that I mentioned it, he's pretty much locked in. We you don't want to spread lies on your podcast, so
that would be bad.
A case of katanas for appearing tonight. What was your question?
My question was about open deck list and how you feel about that.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a successful experiment. I think, there's certainly a romance to surprising somebody with a out of nowhere card, and Finkel doesn't like it for that reason and stuff like that. I think that's all true. Scouting was annoying. I don't know. I'm of two minds about it. Part of me is like, well, nothing bad happened, and it seemed to solve that problem, so why not? The other part of me is, well, it always sucks when something's different in real life than it is online where you're testing, or at the local tournament where you're testing, or whatever. So, on balance, if I'm the czar or whatever in charge of deciding what happens with it, probably for events that have video coverage, I think it's probably a fine rule. That's one of those. Flip a coin though. Either way, I wouldn't care really. I thought it was fine. It worked. Nothing scary happened.
Okay, so what if the Grand Prix that's taking place in Providence this weekend? It's like a team Grand Prix. I don't know if it's limited or not. I legitimately have no idea, but maybe it's team. Is it limited?
Out there on Friday.
Who's the squad?
David Williams, Paul Rietzel, and me.
Oh baby, the A team. What if that was open deck list? How would you feel about that?
Wouldn't really move, in a limited tournament. Wouldn't really move the needle. It just kind of changes. It doesn't really. That's not really affecting me. I wouldn't be thinking about it. I'll put it that way. I think kind of a wash.
Okay. Like I don't know if it enhances the experience or makes it worse. Like you sit down across from your opponent like round 3, and it's just like, all right, here's my deck list, here's yours, let's exchange them, and like you and your team are looking over their deck list, and they're looking over yours, and like I don't know if that's a better play experience or not. It's just something I think it's kind of curious and it's interesting. Like if it should only be at Pro Tours and big tournaments, or if it should be at like Grand Prix, which are, I mean, that adds a lot of time to the tournament probably, and there's over 1,000 people ideally, if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, there's been some suggestions that it should be like open deck list, like you can consult it, so it's no longer a memory exercise. I think that's kind of smart, but it could slow things down. And if ultimately that's the way things go, I mean, you could have open deck lists on an online platform. There's no reason you couldn't. I don't know. It'll evolve. I think that's kind of the stakes are pretty low.
Let's talk Mulligan, Tommy. Let's talk about the London Mulligan.
Yeah, this one, the stakes are higher in this one.
Yeah. Do we like it?
Yeah, if you get this one wrong, things can kind of break. Yeah, I've tweeted that I'm not a fan of it in in modern legacy vintage. I think it kind of the cards are already so powerful when they show up with a little bit less predictability and frequency. So if you've got certain cards that show up with incredible frequency, things start to get a little bit wonky. So basically, I think that some of these formats are already kind of just hanging on by a thread in terms of some deck not breaking them, or they're not having to ban a card every 6 months. When it comes to a legacy, comes to a modern, I don't know that you want to allow them an even more powerful mulligan. So if that was my decision to make, I would say fine. If it's legal on Arena, if the format is supported on Arena, London Mulligan. If it's not, we'll do a classic mulligan, whatever you want to call it, that makes it sound not like London and Vancouver or whatever. That's what I would kind of try to split the baby. If I wasn't able to split the baby, I guess I'd pick London Mulligan for everything, because I think it's a significant amount better in limited and standard, I think.
I think it's way better in those formats. I think it's pretty terrible in the older formats. Like the further back you go, the worse it is. But how much are you supposed to care about, like, your vintage players, which you are one of, that it might I don't know if it fully ruins your format because of Bazaar and everything. You could tell me, obviously, better than anybody how much it affects that format. Yeah,
it didn't. We played some. I mean, it didn't when it was online. It doesn't ruin it. And, Bazaar is actually not one of the big benefactors, because the hate in games 2 and 3, it's actually more detrimental that your opponent is often going to have like hate card misstep or whatever, and you just kind of locked out. It actually wasn't a great boon to those decks, in my opinion. It's really good, though, for the decks that are trying to go like Lotus Time Twister or Mox Soul Ring Wheel of Fortune. Those decks, I mean, really benefited. Having said that, I mean, they just printed a Force of Will Negate that's about to enter the format. But I don't know. Vintage is just kind of not in a great, or not. I mean, it's fun, but it's not super stable with any Mulligan rule. And yeah, I think that one definitely makes it less stable. There's just the odds that someone has a deck that's just like consistent turn 1 with backup or whatever. Pretty high with that Mulligan rule. That Mulligan rule was really powerful in that format.
The counterspell you're talking about from Modern Horizons got previewed a couple of days ago. Force of Negation. What do we think about this card? This, like, it's obviously, it strikes me as a card that they've tested a lot, because you don't come to that text on a card without playing it a lot. Doesn't mean it still isn't very good. It strikes me as still a pretty darn good card. Maybe it just gets better again the further back you go in Magic and Vintage and stuff like that.
Yeah. My first reaction, and of course it's a first reaction, we just found out about this card, we haven't played with it. I don't know. Part of what was unique and fun about Legacy and Vintage was Force of Will, and I'm tapped out, but my opponent still has to ask me permission to play their stuff, right? And yeah, technically you had disrupting Shoal and other cards in Modern. I mean, theoretically, I could have been asking my opponent's permission to do whatever, but this is going to be perhaps a sea change in that way. I don't know. It kind of makes it feel like the formats are bleeding together a little bit. I don't really care for it. I think it was fine to just have Force of Will, pitch a blue card, counter your thing, be a Legacy and Vintage thing. And Modern has a different play pattern where you're going to thought seize your opponent if you need to interact on turn 1. And then the Modern ban list was supposed to be a tool to keep things running at a turn 3 or 4, whatever, turn 4 format, whatever the ideal was, not turn 2, not turn 2.5. So do you need this thing if that's kind of the whole, organizing philosophy of the format? That's my first reaction. Maybe I'll shuffle up, maybe I'll play with it and be like, oh, great, this is great. I can pitch a Cruel Ultimatum and, it'll be fun and we can factor fiction now or whatever. Look, you don't know until you play with the cards. I'm never one to really dig in and say, I know exactly how this is going to feel or what's going to happen. But my first reaction, not in love with it.
All right. Fair enough. I think it's kind of cool. I want to see the cycle. I want to see everything that this set is kind of up to. I like that Factor Fiction's back because that card's super awesome. I like the return of Wing Shards, even though it's probably not going to be that good. A lot of these cards I think are more geared towards this limited format. But Fluster Storm's a cool printing. Goblin Matron's a cool printing. It seems like there's some pretty cool stuff going on with this set.
Yeah, for sure. They're taking big swings. It's not going to be a dud. It's either going to be do too much or it'll be just right. And yeah, it's one of those sets where I think this might be one of those where you want to buy a box or a complete set as opposed to just a couple cards, because it just every time they spoil something, I'm like, oh, well, that could be a deck or that could slot right into a deck or whatever. So it's exciting in that way. It's weird because the latest, I say real set, the latest expansion set, kind of fully formed, War of the Spark, kind of felt like that too. So many powerful cards. I mean, every other pack has a card that you're like, oh, this could go in a constructed deck. So this is interesting because it's so close to that. It feels like the eternal formats, Legacy and Vintage and Modern, are kind of getting turned on their head repeatedly, very rapidly. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I do too. I mean, it feels like to me they're trying to shake it up quite a bit. I think War of the Spark has been a very successful set. The standard format's cool. It's having effect across multiple formats. And, obviously Modern Horizons isn't going to be legal in standard, but I think that this set's going to be pretty cool too and have a lot of effects across many different formats, which I think ultimately is a good thing. And that'll be honestly pretty nice because things were, at least for me, I mean, I don't play that much anymore, obviously, but things were starting to feel a little stale. I mean, maybe their plan of shaking things up is having no idea what they're going to do with organized play, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah.
But, I think this shakeup is actually kind of nice because they think these formats need to have some life injected into them.
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. I think when a set like War of the Spark comes out and it kind of oh, these cards are playable in every format, I don't know. Sometimes it just feels like they just undercosted a bunch of cards by 1 mana. Like Gnarset. Well, that you're getting basically 4 mana's worth of effect. Teferi that costs 3. Yeah, that's really that's a pretty good mana war. I mean, maybe that thing should cost 4. Karn, the how backbreaking that can be. So yeah, of course these cards are going to show up. I mean, they cost too little mana, and I like to have cards that show up that are interesting, shake things up. But I don't know. This is just not. I'm sick of it. That's the brand. So when I show up and see that this many cards are useful and popular in a bunch of different applications, and then I try to dig in and say, well, what's really going on here? It's just, I don't know. To some extent, it just feels like the Planeswalkers cost 1 too few mana.
Well, I think that for the ones that you mentioned, even Saheeli too, which we didn't even talk about, I think that Teferi should cost 4 mana. After playing against it a bunch this weekend, it's just look, I get it. You're pushing some cards, whatever. But I mean, come on. And same thing with Gnarset too, honestly. And then it's not like these Planeswalkers, they have the static abilities too, and the static abilities are all they're good and they matter. It's not garbage static abilities or real static abilities on the 3 mana ones where maybe you'd think the static abilities that would go on the more expensive ones because they're powerful, but they're on the 3 mana ones. It is a little bit strange.
You're right. For 6 mana, Kaya will let you target your opponent's hexproof stuff.
Yeah.
3 mana, your opponent's cantrips no longer work. It's like, is that okay? All right. That maybe that's the appropriate costing for standard, but it's certainly not the appropriate costing for legacy and vintage. And so it just, I mean, I understand they don't design cards with those formats in mind all the time or necessarily in mind, but yeah, it feels like a little, I don't know, I feel a little bit like the boat's being rocked too much by cards like that. You already had effects like Leovold, it required you to invest a blue, a green, and a black mana into a 3/3 creature versus, oh, this card demands of you that you pay 1 colorless and 2 blue. Oh, how are we going to manage that? So yeah, some of these cards like Gnarset are just a little bit annoying in that way.
All right, my man. Let's get to some competitive Magic. Something you and I've been playing for 2 decades now.
Yeah, sounds right.
About a little over half of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Played in the same PTQ that you were able to win after I was dispatched by my burn opponent in the Burn Mirror. You defeated him and then won the tournament and got second place in a Mythic Championship, which qualifies you presumably for the next one or the next couple, I think.
Yeah, I qualified for the next one by virtue of the finish, and then I made silver, and the last opportunity to use silver will be I think it's, what is it, a Roanoke PT or something, or Richmond?
It's the Richmond PT.
So some podunk town that I'd never set foot in if they didn't make me, whatever it is. And sorry, that was a joke for everyone who lives in the southern continental U.S. The next 2 PTs I'll be playing, and yes, by virtue of that streak of good luck in the qualifier, followed by a streak of incredible luck in the championship.
Okay. So we know that's what that's going to get you. And you're silver after getting second place in an MC, which weirdly just seems like low for getting second.
Yeah, well, if you get first, you get something else, I'm sure. But no, the rewards are weird now. You're in this transition period where silver still means something, but only till 12/31, end of the year. And then the Mythic Championship points mean something, but not yet. That's how you're going to qualify for the World Championship. If I can finish in the top 4 non-MPL players that are not otherwise qualified, and they gave me 42 Mythic points, which is like 42 Monopoly dollars or whatever. But they tell me how to redeem them. I need to get more of those than anyone else except for 3 other people. Then I'll qualify for Worlds. So I'm in good shape for that. I mean, relatively good shape. There's still a lot of Magic to be played. So yeah, it's I adapt as I go. The good news is all you really got to do is kind of show up for a couple tournaments, try your hardest, and the rest kind of takes care of itself. But yeah, the organized play is in a weird transitional state right now.
And the question is like, where do we think it's going and where do you want it to be going? We saw the announcement with the MPL where they added Savid and Jess. And so, that's all great. And congratulations to them. I talked about that last week with Tommy Ashton. I know you wrote your article about that for Channel, touching on that topic some as well. But like, where do you think things are going and where do you want to see them go? I mean, we've been doing this for so long and it's never been this confusing and unknown.
Yeah. So set aside for the moment, like the thing that I wrote the article about, Jess, and these kind of special invites and those 2 slots in the MPL, whatever. Set aside those for a moment because people feel how they feel about those. If they want to know how I feel, I think they can probably glean it from the article. But I'm like I said, I'm of 2 minds about a lot of these complex issues. But looking at the bigger picture of like the MPL itself, how that's structured, how streamers are supporting themselves and supporting each other, how the Mythic Championships are now going to alternate between a paper or tabletop Mythic Championship and an online or arena Mythic Championship. I don't know. I think there's more positive than negative. I think the trend line is towards more engagement, a more polished product, a price structure that perhaps is top heavy. I mean, like I said, I experienced that, but that's okay. It's intended to have some standout players, reward those players in kind of a standout way, and then follow them for the coming years and months. So Overall, I think things are kind of shaping up, and they're getting more things right than they're getting wrong. And then there's the occasional reminder that they still are who they are, and they don't have it all figured out. Some of the stuff gets decided last minute, then walked back, then tweaked, and hopefully they're eventually kind of grow out of that. But they're moving so fast. I'd rather that they move too fast than too slow, I guess. And so overall, cautiously optimistic about the state of things, and the question marks that are popping up are more about kind of execution, timing, consistency, the fine tuning. There some people look at the Jess, and is it Seville? How do you say it?
Look, man, your guess is as good as mine. I'm pretty sure it's Seville.
When there's a J's next to Z's, I kind of just
come
on out and just
yeah.
They invited those two individuals. Some people are taking that as a sign. Well, they're not really investing in the right things, or they're not investing in what they say they're investing in, which was kind of my take. Like, if you say you want to be an esport, that's Ben Stark's take too. You say you want to be an esport, okay, invest that way. And I don't think they necessarily are doing that. But overall, I think that kind of when the dust settles, there'll be something that's pretty compelling to watch, something that still, for the most part, rewards competitive players. As long as they don't double down on it, I think they'll be fine. What was your reaction? I mean, to seeing the 16 slots added to that arena championship. I mean, look, you're one of the most prolific, or you have one of the biggest platforms among any person of color in this community. I mean, what was your reaction to kind of hearing that and seeing that?
I mean, that's the only way I'm going to qualify or ever play that tournament. So we're live. It's the first I mean, that's the first thing I thought is, man, this is the first time in my life where being black might actually be a good thing. Ding, ding, ding. But I don't know. Like, it's if they are, it's unclear what they're going for. That much is clear,
right?
And so if they're going to add those 16 slots, it reminded me very much of the Mythic Invitational at PAX East, where I got the invite to that and was very, very much unexpected. And so now I'm just thinking to myself, okay, like my actual first thought was, okay, they might be like, hey, do you want to play in this thing? In which case I'd be like, yeah, I'll happily play in this thing, and make another documentary about it and try to bring value in the ways that I bring value and attention to the game in a positive way, in which I wouldn't have a chance to do it otherwise, because my life is different now. I don't have a lot of time to play. Great. If they see value in that or me and the things that I do, that's cool. Does that make the tournament worse, or does it make it less competitive? I don't think so, but I'm also not sure. Like, does it take away from the credibility of the tournament if they're just adding 16 people who wouldn't get to play in it otherwise, like, myself or Saffron Olive or other personalities in the tournament?
Well, yeah, that is. I mean, that's the elephant in the room. That's the $1 million question, right? For me, so I've had to think about this question in the professional world, right? The non-Magic, the Muggle world. There's diversity initiatives, and there's people have had these debates about what does it mean to kind of mark someone as a diversity type of candidate. There's a whole debate in sports about the Rooney Rule, which mandated that the NFL teams interview an African American candidate when there was a head coaching position that opened up. I once asked sports reporter Howard Bryant, why are you down on that rule? I was just curious, what was it that made him critical of the rule? And he said he spoke to multiple black coaches who said, I felt humiliated, dragged into a process without a real shot at getting the job. So, okay, that really changed my thinking on the topic. I mean, it certainly complicated it. These aren't easy questions. These aren't simple problems, and the solutions that are proposed, therefore, are also not simple. And so, yeah, you just kind of, you look at any of these. Okay, so getting back to Magic and the legitimacy of it, it's a similar type of question, right? These coaches felt like their interviews were delegitimized, and they're, kind of their position, they were there because they were black and not because someone wanted them there. Maybe in this case, players are going to think, well, I'm there because of this or that. I'm there because, I'm a female player, not because of my skill or whatever. And fans are going to think a certain way. So these are complicated issues, and you're going to talk to 3 people. You're going to get 3 different opinions on it. the way I think about drawing a line, I think if you're bringing qualified people to the table and then giving them a chance to succeed or be evaluated fairly, I think you're probably doing a good thing. You're probably expanding the opportunities, expanding representation, and then also like counteracting some biases that keep people away from the table. If you're bringing people who aren't qualified to the table, then I think it does get into the farce that I was alluding to with the whole Rooney Rule conversation and like, you know, Howard Bryant's take on it. But so for me, there was a legitimate conversation to be had with these latest 2 invites. There's a legitimate conversation to be had with these 16 invites that are coming. We don't know who's going to fill those slots. If they invited you tomorrow to play, I would feel like that's like, you're a successful competitive player, and even if you're not necessarily one of the 30 best players in the world right now, I don't think it would be to the tournament's detriment. But when you start to talk about Saffron Olive, no offense to Seth, he's an amazing content creator, an asset to the community. But I think that would be to the detriment of the community because he doesn't have the tournament success and pedigree that I'd be looking for. And so that's a distinction that kind of just popped into my head, but I don't know. Other people are going to draw the line differently.
But I also, so I think that the example of using Saffron Olive, Seth, in this example, I think is really interesting too, because I agree with your premise, but I also think what's really interesting is like, okay, so he gets invited, various other people get invited, right? And he might be going into this thing and he ends up being, let's say, the least accomplished player in the tournament, right? So everyone can kind of draw on that like it's the NCAA tournament and go like, well, this guy, why are they in this? You know, why did this team make the tournament when all these other people, they could have been invited, all the snubs in quotes, as it were, right? But like, what if Seth is whatever that school that beat Virginia, right? Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is a really interesting story. Holy shit, this is really cool. This guy won a match. This guy won multiple matches. This guy's in the top 32. He's in the top 16. All of a sudden it's like, oh, actually, like maybe they did deserve to be there. Or maybe they didn't, but they took advantage of the opportunity, and that's a good enough story to draw attention to the game in a positive way that makes more people want to engage in the game. So I think there are positives and negatives to including like almost anyone for these free invites or, you know, gift invites, whatever, however you want to label them, because, you know, if a person ends up like doing better than expected, all of a sudden it's like, well, I guess it's okay. Maybe they aren't as bad as we thought, or like they're making the best of the situation that was granted and given to them, which is all you can ask for someone to do. You know, if someone falls flat on their face, they get invited and they just go like 0-2, 0-4, don't deal a point of damage, misclick their way to oblivion. It's like, okay, like that's the worst case scenario. But if they have competitive matches against great players or string together some number of wins, all of a sudden it's like, well, I guess you know, Wizards or whoever's making the decision, or, you know, organized play or whatever, maybe their choice was justified then. You know, like it's tough to say.
Yeah, I think that's fair from the vantage point of the quality of the broadcast. I think the devil's advocate or the flip side of that coin is, you know, if Seth is there and has a pretty good run and goes, you know, 6-2 or whatever, I mean, there's still someone sitting at home. There's still someone who poured a lot into it on the competitive track and fell just short. And so I know some of the people who felt like this was the wrong direction also felt like, hey, this stuff, this prize money, these slots, they sit atop a tournament structure, a ladder, a step-by-step process to get into these things that's intended to be, you know, a carrot at the end of the stick. And if you're just going to run us around the track and never let us catch that, and you're just going to kind of, and then, you know, it's just not fair, and we're not rewarding and incentivizing things.
But what is fair? That's the thing. So what is fair? And fair is completely contextual and up to someone. You'll ask 3 different people, you get 3 different answers. As you said earlier, like that's one of the things that is like frustrated me during this entire thing is like, well, what is fair? No one gets to define fair in this instance. And, you know, how should one accomplish the ability to get invited to these things? Like, do I play competitive Magic anymore with anything resembling regularity or seriousness? No, I don't. I don't anymore for a ton of different reasons. But I have felt like over the past 5 years that like the way to have an impact in this game on some level is to produce content, to work behind the scenes or work in front of the camera like I do for coverage, and like editing Star City's website and helping other people like try to get where they want to go. like if I was a competitive player right now, and I posted this on Twitter, I would, myself personally, with how I think, I would love, in a weird way, I would kind of love what's going on, because it is unclear how you qualify for things, so I get to decide that, and I get to do things that I would not get to do otherwise. If I'm like a really good competitive player right now, I would ask every like competitive player who thinks they should get to play in like these tournaments, how many of you have asked people at Wizards, like emailed them and just go like, how do I qualify for this? What do I need to do to be eligible for this sort of thing? What do you guys need to see from me to be able to be one of the people that you consider for these invites to these tournaments, because I want to play in them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I don't think people are doing at all right now, is they feel as though they deserve to play in these tournaments. They feel as though my accomplishments dictate that I've earned the right to play in these tournaments, that I deserve the right to play in these tournaments. No one deserves anything.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, you touched on a lot of the important back and forth there. Yes, you've put in sweat equity into Magic. It's a different type of sweat equity than what, Corey Burkhart's putting in or whoever else, but it's still your effort. It's still your time, your love, your passion. So that has value, and for them to reward that is not wrong. I think that's true. But then a lot of players said, look, well, there's a missing piece here. Transparency and predictability. If I'm going to plan what I spend my time on for the next 3 months, right? Let's say I am Reed Duke or Corey Burkhardt, whoever, name one of these players who plays a lot, Logan Nettles, name a player. I'm going to plan out my next 3 months. Shouldn't I kind of understand what are the relevant variables? What are the relevant rewards? What am I chasing? And then also, they didn't come out. And so this was, in my view, this was a mistake on their part. They should have, in my view, come out and said, we're going to spend 5% of the tournament budget, or whatever the percentage is, on these initiatives. That's comforting to me as a player who's chasing the other 95%. Because I think that's the reality. The reality is that there's going to be 95% for the Corey Burkhardts and the Reed Duke and any other white guy you can name. Not that these guys are, not to say anything bad about them. Not that that's not like Magic's lacrosse team or anything, but these are just the first two names I thought of. There's probably still going to be 90%, 95% reserve for those guys, but there's no indication right now. There's no guarantee that it's not going to creep, and so people are worried. Well, then is tomorrow going to be the Silver Showcase all over again? If today is a few invites for these folks, so I think there's a little bit of communication gap, or a lot of communication gap. There's a lack of transparency and predictability. I think that's all a separate question from what's the right thing to do. But if you get that wrong, people are left to kind of fear the worst, and that's kind of what's happening.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I guess the way that I kind of look at it is like, I would be trying to read the tea leaves, and maybe some of these people, maybe some players are sitting here, they're just going like, I don't want to stream. Like, I just want to play my competitive Magic, and I want to be great at it, and then I want to qualify for these tournaments, and like that's what I want to do, and I want transparency to know what the routes are and everything. Look, I can totally empathize with that, but like that's just currently not the reality, and we can argue all day about if it should or shouldn't be. I think the answer is it should be, and they don't have their systems in place right now, and it's very frustrating. I totally get that, but like the way that I look at it from my vantage point is, the people that they are giving opportunities to, some of it is in your control, some of it's not in your control. So you try to control the things as best you can, which is, you play in tournaments and do well in them. But yeah, maybe you are more active on social media. Maybe you write more. Maybe you produce more content to get on their radar. Where, like I'm thinking of someone right now who I adore and I'm a huge fan of, Ben Weitz. Ben Weitz just wants to play Magic. And he wants to be really good at Magic, which he already is. And he wants to play against the best people. And he doesn't want to write. And he doesn't want to stream. And he does his podcast that he does with, I think, Sam Pardee and Neil for fun. He doesn't want to be Saffron Olive or any of those people. He's got a day job, all that stuff. And it's like, okay, I totally get that, Ben. And you are a really good Magic player. But like, if you want to have access to these opportunities, maybe you have to do some things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And is that good? Is that bad? Again, I think that's arguable. But is that what I find to be the reality of the situation that people, I think, are frustrated by and don't want to admit? Is like, yeah, you probably have to do some things that you didn't want to do before. You probably got to go stream now. You probably got to like start writing articles bi-weekly for someone, or be more active on social, or whatever it is. And that's just what it's going to be. And it's not a matter of if it's fair or not. It's just reality, at least in the reality we currently live in.
But that's fair. But there's got to be at least two respects in which Ben might feel like he doesn't know what to do next. One being he doesn't know exactly how valuable is streaming to them, how valuable is article writing to them. It's a hidden objective. So he's trying to hit a target he can't see. That's got to be frustrating. And then I know that folks are feeling like the things I certainly can't control, my gender identity, my race or ethnicity. If those are being factored in, and it seems like they are, then players are going to get frustrated that, hey, I can't control that part. So my suggestion is that, look, let people know that's not the biggest piece of the pie or the biggest opportunity. That's just we're trying to correct for some biases and other things that have had a negative impact, but still, by and large, this is going to be about tournament performance. If Ben crushes it at the next event, he's going to have opportunities. I think some of the nervousness is predictable, if not fully justified. It's certainly predictable, and their messaging just didn't go far enough to anticipate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all things being honest, I don't think the messaging has been very clear or good, and things are changing somewhat rapidly. I know you said a handful of minutes ago that you'd rather see them move too fast than too slow. I think we've seen the too slow version of things where, it's like, hey, you guys ever going to increase the prize pools, or like, what are we doing? So we've been on that side of things, and now we're on the side of things where, things are moving really quick. Arena is exploding. They want to be in on this whole esports thing for however long this is going to last for this game and in general. I've had some conversations with people where it's like, how long, like with esports, I'm always thinking to myself, is this like a forever thing, or is this like a FanDuel DraftKings thing? We're like 5 years from now, we're like, yo, remember when everyone was just like filling up arenas watching League of Legends and no one's doing that anymore? Like, what is this going to be?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't know if this is, I'm 70 and like my kids or my grandkids or, kids I'm teaching in college are just like, hey, like, esports, were you around when it started? It's like, can you imagine meeting someone who was like, I was around when the NBA started or the ABA started? And it's like, well, how did that go? And it's like, they just decided they wanted to organize it. So they did. Like,
yeah, but we don't know. Right. Exactly. We don't know. It could be, I was there when Pogs started, or, when when Pet Rocks were the thing. Yeah. I haven't really thought about the long-term view of it, but do you view it as more likely the NBA or as more likely, Pogs or whatever else came and went?
I view it more likely as the NBA because I think video games are just kind of forever, and the replayability is so high if a game is good. Yeah. Like I don't know how much of a gamer you are, but like, I don't know, like I could fire up an old video game right now. Like if I wanted to just go play Mega Man 2 right now, just because it's fun to play, I could do that. Like that's just something I'm always going to be fascinated by, that kind of stuff until I die, probably. And I think that's how, like, a basketball player is. It's just like, yeah, I'd love to go watch a game of basketball or play a game of basketball. When does esports start to infiltrate school? And not like college, but like, we at gym class, we did basketball when we were in first grade, right? Does that infiltrate into elementary school where it's like, hey, here's Pac-Man or here's various video game? Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know, because video games and esports aren't a thing that's frowned upon anymore. Yeah, but like these games, they're shoveling all this money into this, and everyone's a part of it in some fashion. And now, because nerd culture is accepted, as the Avengers Endgame is breaking a bazillion records, where 20 years ago, when we were in our adolescence, would that be the case? I mean, I remember those bad Batman movies and stuff, and you didn't tell people who played Magic or Dungeons and Dragons, and now it's like, if you don't play Dungeons and Dragons, you're a fucking loser. If you're not watching Game of Thrones, it's like you're a loser.
Yeah.
So
weird.
Like, so I don't know what's going to happen, but I also think, like, and this is circling back to you mentioning, like, they are moving really fast, and part of me is like, well, why do they feel the need to move so fast when they could slow down a little bit and get this right? But the powers that be at Hasbro might be saying, you need to move fast because we want you to move fast because reasons we don't have to tell you, which is money, whatever, spreadsheets. Or they might just try to move fast because it's like, yo, we got to get while the getting's good, like DraftKings and FanDuel did. we got to cash in and get all this money from Arena.
Even if esports writ large has a long future, there's no particular game that's guaranteed to have its time in the spotlight be long. So I imagine under either scenario, whether you're optimistic about the future of esports or not, games may have a limited shelf life. Now, Magic, I mean, you and I are probably of the belief that Magic is one of these games that has real staying power. I mean, it's proven itself. It's a captivating game. It's deep. It's complex. So we may be of one mind about that, but you're right. I mean, the folks in charge may feel like the window to crack this thing open may not be open that long, and so they've got to capitalize on it. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I think, they maybe have seen the cost of moving slow is a different type. There was a leadership change where Chris Cox came in and took over, and I think you saw kind of him placing big bets on and doubling down on things that were really working. Let's see any other gambling analogies I can work into the sentence, but wagering it all on, moving all in on different ideas. And
he's very pot committed in making this work.
And despite the long odds facing any sport, no, but really, I mean, for me that was like a real switch, a real 0 to 1 kind of switch in their thinking, where we're not going to just make incremental improvements to Magic Online. We're going to do Arena. We're not just going to add a Pro Tour, even if we said we would. We're going to change the way Pro Tours work. I think overall it's been positive. It's always a little bit frustrating when you are the rat in the experiment and they're running experiment real time. And I'm not talking about myself, because I've got my job, I've got stuff that's keeping me busy. The folks that are in there doing this for a living, those are the folks that are the guinea pigs, that I'm sure they feel, jerked around and yanked around. I mean, 1 month they're aiming at, well, there's this many slots and this much money, and it gets divided up that way, and if I can make that. And then, the next day there's a different number of slots, a different way of qualifying, or they don't know, and now it's even less clear. So I want to say I understand their frustration, and it's a privilege, obviously, that I'm saying, hey, well, it doesn't bother me. But I think overall the trend line's been positive.
There are other things too that you have to kind of take into account in the conversation, of which honestly I just thought of, which is one, you also got to remember, right, with them racing to do all this stuff with Arena, Magic is meant to be played on a tabletop. So while Arena is a fantastic product, we've been playing Magic Online for a very long time and all of that stuff, and hopefully one day Magic Arena comes to phones and tablets and everything else, right? Like, at the end of the day, at least for me, maybe I'm old school, I don't know, I much more prefer to play Magic with my friends at a tabletop tournament than playing it online. And maybe their thought process is, we want to run this Arena thing for, we want to get as much out of it as we can, and then direct people to playing tabletop Magic, because maybe there's more money in people buying product that way than doing it on Arena.
Well, maybe, but every other person I talk to seems to think that there won't be tabletop Magic at the Pro Tour level for much longer. I mean, like I said, who knows? This is some crystal ball stuff. We're not in those meetings, but and forget about we're not in the meetings. I mean, they may not even know, but the investment in the online version of Magic has been much greater than the investment in paper. Even though I totally agree. I mean, not only would I prefer to play paper Magic with a group of friends or even acquaintances, I strongly prefer it. I mean, if I could never play paper again, I guess I'd play online, but maybe not. I mean, I practiced online in preparation for what's going to happen in person. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, obviously, but wow, if that were to be the case, that the best way the premier tournaments were all a series of just tournaments only on Arena, I mean, I guess I would still do it. They've made it easy enough to access that I don't want to act like I wouldn't be interested in that, or I would totally not. But I'd be sad about that. I really like even just like the collecting the physical cards and packing up for that tournament and kind of figuring out, well, these are my cards. Just touching it, it's tactile. I mean, all that stuff matters. I mean, for any of us who are really Magic has its hooks in us. All those things matter, and there's so much that you don't get in the online experience. Just mashing buttons and kind of, I don't know. Yeah, I don't want it to feel like Mega Man 2. Even if as much affection as we have for different types of games, I think Magic is something different to me, at least.
No, I feel the same way. I think some things are meant to be experienced a certain way. I don't know if this is a direct parallel, but it's just like, I don't know, I could, we're both people who enjoy food. It's like, would you rather just have your food DoorDash to you of a restaurant you love, or would you rather like sometimes just go and have that experience of going to that place and getting, served from top to bottom and enjoying that entire experience? Like, how good is a linea if it gets delivered to your doorstep as opposed to going through the whole course meal there? Something like that, right?
Or Hooters. When I posted Hooters hot wings, I don't know what it was, but the experience just wasn't quite the same. And
no, I totally understand. I'm right there with you. So, I don't know, man. Like it is very tough to predict where this stuff is going, and further, it is even more difficult as I talked with Tommy last week about what this stuff should be. Should the MPL be a hyper competitive thing? And how much traffic and eyeballs does that draw, as opposed to having it be a diverse thing with some players who are not the best players in the world, but are entertaining personalities that people really, really enjoy. And we're seeing women and genders, tons of different genders and colors and races and everything. We're getting all sides of it, the entire rainbow and all that good stuff. Versus this is the 32 best players, and now one of them drops out, and that's the 33rd best player, and everything like that. What should it be? Why should it be the thing that people want it to be? Is there a correct answer to this? I don't even know if there's a correct answer to it. The thing that frustrates everyone, I think, is that it was stated to be one thing and they changed it midstream, which frustrates anyone anytime that happens in any aspect of life of it's this one thing. Actually, it's kind of another thing now.
Yeah, that's part of it. And then, and also, could they have possibly been able to achieve both? Could they have given a platform to some of the underrepresented communities and members of those communities without not having, here are the 32 best players, we're going to jam them against each other until one emerges and they're called world champion or they're called whatever they're called, and then also have silver showcases and whatever the one that was successful, not the silver showcase, but the one that was successful was the Mythic Invitational, where the format was a little bit more high variance, and you saw streamers doing well. You saw people that weren't all just, Reed Duke and Corey Burkhart, to pick on those guys again, doing well at that tournament. So when I saw that product, I was actually hopeful that they would be able to do both, that they'd be able to have a league that really was about who is the best at the most recent tournaments. Just kind of, again, thinking about what does it mean to have the NBA playoffs as the 8 best teams, or, in each conference. It was going to be that. And then also you'd find space and you'd find funding, those other things. They've taken it and they said, okay, well, actually, these are going to be more of a mixed delivery. Even though we still have these same dual objectives, we're going to kind of not keep them so separate, and we'll see how it goes. But I think that criticism is valid. I think the people that are wanting for more separation and more clarity, I don't think those people are wrong.
No, I don't think those people are wrong at the end of the day. I don't. And again, it's just this weird situation of, it's not a clear-cut answer, right? What should it be versus what should it be versus, is it what I want it to be that benefits me, or is it something that benefits everybody?
Right.
There's no great way to answer that question. And this happens in all walks of life. You just brought up the NBA. Should it be the best 8 teams from each conference, or should it just be the best 16 teams record-wise to make the playoffs?
You want my opinion on that?
I mean, sure.
I think the conferences have outlived their utility. I think it should just be the 16 best records.
I lean that way now too, because, Detroit, why are they in the playoffs, right? They're garbage. I'm trying to think of who missed in the West. Like Sacramento probably should have been a playoff team this year, because they were obviously better than Detroit record-wise and just on the court-wise and everything. And so, should they change it? There are reasons why they shouldn't change it that are travel-related and all these other things. So why do we even have conferences? But, the NBA is not going to change it mid-season and just go like, well, actually,
Right.
Conferences are just, those are donezo right now. So
yeah, it would be particularly. I mean, people would lose it justifiably if in one year there was a small market team that was about to sneak in, and let's say the Lakers, and this may be a segue to another question, but let's say the Lakers were ninth in the West, and they go, you know what, this is the year, trying to capitalize on one of the top 2 or 3 TV markets. This is the year that we're going to disband the conference system, and Lakers, you're in, and the Bucks or whoever else in a small market, you're out. If that were to happen a couple years from now, people would kind of lose it and say, look, you should have if you want to have a competition committee meeting in between seasons. I mean, there's a reason that sports have matured in a way. That's a mature way of governing changes to the competitive landscape. You do it in between seasons. You do it in a structured way. You get buy-in from the stakeholders. You make one announcement, not 20. And you say, that's the way it was. This is the way it is. Here are the reasons. We decided. So, that's a mature point. Think about how mature they've gotten with card bannings. They don't operate with that level of maturity when it comes to organized play decisions. You and I both know, we all see it. But that's why I think, the sports analogy is a good one for those who are well-versed in sports. And that's not everybody listening, but it's just the level of maturity to pick a time and place and a cast of decision makers and other stakeholders that they're going to get input from, make that decision on that timeline. Maybe we'll get there in a few years.
See, I've thought for a very long time that Magic, and this is because I'm such a big basketball guy, that obviously the NBA has a players association with Chris Paul and LeBron and everything, and they make decisions as a group because the NBA can't do its thing without its players. And in some respects, Magic, one could argue, right, that Magic can't do its thing without the competitive players, like the top level players that care, your Reed Dukes and your Coreys and your Hueys and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But the scary thing is, I think that the people at Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro could argue that, no, we'll be fine. And that part is a bit of a tough pill to swallow, but I also just think it's the truth. If they can easily just go look, we got 20 million people to play this game. You guys are a small percentage of it, so we're going to make the decisions we want to make. And if you don't like it, tough shit. Which sucks, but it's true. And the NBA can't do that with the Players Association because they have to meet common ground for all the things they're doing with the CBA and contracts and everything else. So yeah, and there's obviously a lot of give and take, and that's why lockouts happen and stuff. And there's not going to be a lockout of a Magic tournament. That's not a thing.
Yeah, there's a labor relations issue since it's unionized, but even taking that aside, I think basketball, obviously, basketball without LeBron is a different product. Magic's not the same without LSV, but it's not the same, not to the same degree. There's LeBron just galloping down the field, jumping out of the building is different than LSV hitting his 4th land drop or whatever. As far as the product that you're delivering,
yeah.
So I totally agree. It's not quite apples to apples, and maybe that does embolden Hasbro, but at the end of the day, I want to go back. Still, though, at the end of the day, even if the players are completely interchangeable, you're still creating a reward system, and you're still telling people still feel the competitive players I meet at the PTQ that you and I played in. We played against players. We shook hands with players who said, "Hey, Cedric, I love your content. Hey, Matt, I love the Sick of It articles." And these folks do think, "Hey, if Corey Burkhart or Corey Baumeister or Brad Nelson or Reed Duke, whoever, they're doing XYZ, that could be me 2 years from now." And if those players are just routinely getting thrashed about, discarded like yesterday's newspaper, then it ought to impact those players' confidence that they want to be the next Brad Nelson, that if they do, they won't be thrown away like yesterday's newspaper. So I think, your brand has many components, and employer brand is one of them. And to the extent these MPLers are now actually employees or quasi-employees or whatever, look, that employer brand matters. How do you treat people? What does your glass door look like? So it's not as simple as, can I go get someone else to do the job? Yeah, probably. Most jobs, there's more than one person that could do it. But you got to think about your employer brand too. So I'm just trying to kind of zoom out a little bit and say, hey, you got to take a long-term view of this. If they can really reward players and people feel like, hey, this is an esport I plug into, folks are gonna let me try to get to Mythic this month, and that becomes a super user or a whale, whatever you want to think about it, depending on how exploitative you think it is. So it's just interesting trade-offs there.
Yeah, and there are a lot of them. It's a very deep and lengthy conversation of what, again, things are, what they should be, how things should be done, all that other stuff. I know a lot of the frustration stems for, at least from Jerry's side, which is why he left, is he just felt like things weren't getting done. That everyone's, like, the feedback that was being given by the MPL just wasn't being listened to. And that can certainly be frustrating, I think, as anyone knows who's worked a job or has interacted with things that you're passionate about that you want to give your feedback to and have it heard. So, maybe change takes place. We are definitely in a transitional phase where we're going to see how this Arena Mythic Championship goes. We're going to see how, what a Grand Prix is going to look like a year from now. I don't even know. Like, I just played in an MCQ this weekend. Like, I've been telling the story a little bit, but this past weekend, I had an MCQ in Tacoma on Saturday and an MCQ in Spokane on Sunday. Tacoma is 45 minutes from where I live, and Spokane is 4 hours from where I live. And so myself, my good friend, Christian Keith, and then Chris Van Meter and Brian Gottlieb, we went to the MCQ in Tacoma, and Christian made top 8, and Brian got 10th, and me and CVM didn't do well. And then, we were planning going to Spokane, and we were just like, nah, good. And like, 4 hours isn't far for a Magic tournament. I've driven 12 hours for PTQs before. Like, 4 hours, that was when I was 20. I'm 30 now and have responsibilities, blah, blah, blah. But like, even now, I had planned on going as of 2 weeks ago and as of last week. And then as we like pull the lens back, the term you use, it's like, well, I don't know what qualifying for this tournament even does for me.
Yeah.
And these are thoughts that I actually had. I'm like, I don't know what qualifying for this tournament even does for me. Most of the time, when I myself personally, at this stage of my life, playing an MCQ, when I play in one, I'm actually just trying to mise free travel overseas. So like the Bilbao PTQs that I was playing in when I won one last year, I wanted a free trip to Bilbao.
Yeah.
And so halfway on the drive to Tacoma, Christian was just like, the worst part is you don't even get a free ticket anymore. And I was like, shit, that's true. So now like the expense for Barcelona, if I qualify, that's just on me. Which, okay, sure, like that is what it is. That's the decision they've made. But, it's also just kind of like, why am I even playing in these? Which I like playing competitive Magic. That's fun. I like to compete. But like, I don't have a reason to drive 4 hours anymore. And I will tell you, because you've PTQ'd long enough, right, where if you're playing in one of your California PTQs, you see the people that walk in and it's just like, okay, that person's good, that person's good, that person's good. If I'm going to win this tournament, I probably got to beat like 3 of those people over the course of the day or something, of the elite people. There was no one elite at this MCQ. That's no disrespect to anyone, but like I know all the good people in Seattle, Vancouver, Boise, Portland, whatever, and none of them came.
What does Jim Rome say? As soon as someone says no disrespect, someone's about to get disrespected.
You bet your ass they are. But like Jeff Cunningham lives in Vancouver. He just didn't come.
Right.
And like A.O. Paquette and like people I would see at these events for sure. It's just like none of them are here. None of the people I know from Portland are here. Like, this is weird. And then it just kind of all hit me. It's like, well, it's actually not really that weird. If you're a say it again.
How was overall attendance?
120 people.
Yeah.
I forgot. Apparently, I forgot to sign up. I signed up for the Spokane one and not the Tacoma one. And so when I got there, they asked my name and I'm just like, blah. And they're just like, yeah, you didn't register. And I'm like, pretty sure I did. And they're just like, yeah, but you didn't though. And I was like, well, fuck, I guess I'm probably not going to get to play. And they're like, nah, we got space. And I'm just like, really? You guys have space? You shouldn't have space. These should be sold out. People are excited about these coming back. Maybe people aren't excited about them coming back. Maybe people aren't excited because there's no plane ticket involved or there's no incentive to play. I don't know. These things there's ripple effects.
Yeah, or maybe they're investing in Arena and trying to get to that top 8 of the top 16 of that thing. And I don't know. There are moments in time where PTQs are overrun with players, and we need more of them. And there are times when things wow, this one's a little bit scantily attended. So I don't know. I hesitate to kind of draw too many conclusions from any 1 week or 2 week. I try to look at the overall path, trend, the slope of the line, however you want to describe it. For competitive play, there's a lot changing. I think if they get the button up the communication a bit, and they just go like, look, we're making these investments for these, and they've done this in some spots with some success. Then I think people will be able to more predictably say, okay, well, the travel reward was really valuable to me. That's no longer there. I'm not going to drive to Spokane. Okay, and maybe that person's life is better for it. That next person's going to say, you know what? For me, it's just about the ability to play both on arena and in tabletop and feel like I'm doing the same thing. And they're doing that. Maybe they're doing that better now than they were 2 years ago. So maybe that person feels even more engaged. I do like overall the opportunities that they're presenting for people to to get a few games in a week, or get a few more in, or play a little bit more competitively, or play a little bit less competitively. I feel like there's just a lot of offerings now versus the old back in the day. It was like, well, you have your one sealed deck PTQ, and if you don't like that, you got your one standard one or whatever. I don't know. Overall, I'm going back and forth here, but I think that's kind of the way it's been going. Some things are positive, some things are negative, and it's hard to say overall like how this competitive scene for the person who's just about to crack into that, who's not necessarily a platinum player or whatever. It's hard to say overall how things are going to shake out, where it's going to land.
Yeah, and can you make everybody happy? Which obviously the answer is no,
right,
because it's never been possible in ever. So, speaking of making everybody happy, Magic Johnson, man. we call that a transition in the biz. Magic Johnson, he's no longer your GM, and I don't know if you saw First Take today.
Yeah, I caught that.
How he just decided, you know what? Fuck it. Magic Johnson is a man of timing. He just decided, we're going to burn it down on the day that they're going to introduce Frank Vogel, your new coach. I'm sure that was just pure happenstance that he decided to come on First Take today, just like he decided to resign on the Lakers' last game, home game as well. You're a Lakers fan. You stole my player. But in a weird way, I think you deserve all of this. And for those of you listening, if you're not huge basketball fans, probably now's a good time to shut her down. But if you want to hear me talk shit to Sperling for the next 15 to 22 minutes, feel free. But he'll battle back because I know he can. It's on you now.
Well, first of all, any bridges that Magic Johnson wants to burn on his way out, he can burn them. So credibility is like a currency that you can bank it, and then once you've got enough bank, you spend it how you want to spend it. Magic Johnson has what we call a lifetime pass in the eyes of Laker fans, in Laker Nation. Magic Johnson, in particular, I mean, if he kneecapped LeBron tomorrow, like Nancy Kerrigan or her goons. I guess it was Tanya Harding's goons.
It was Tanya Harding, yeah.
Yeah, I got to get that right. But if he did a Tanya Harding on LeBron tomorrow, I'm not going to be thrilled with it. But at the end of the day, he's Magic Johnson, okay? Think about the Showtime Lakers. Think about, the HIV retirement and everything he went through. Think about how loyal a supporter of the team, the community, a businessman in the community. I mean, this guy, he has a lifetime pass. So who do I got between him and Rob Pelinka? I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over this, right? So that's my take on the Magic Johnson thing. Now, did he leave things better than he found them? Who knows? I don't know. It's a tough job, and obviously, his resume was more name than game when it came to being an exec. That often happens, but I just think you aren't gonna hear me say an ill word about the great Earvin Magic Johnson. It's not gonna happen,
dude. He had no idea what he was doing at any point.
He did better than his one-time rival Isaiah Thomas.
That's true, but that's great, great, good stuff.
It's a low bar.
Yeah. Good stuff there. It's just the whole thing, this whole season for the Lakers has been like, I couldn't have drawn it up myself any better to see the whole thing burn down. I'm loving every minute. I predicted they wouldn't make the playoffs, and I was right. I don't like to see LeBron get hurt or anything, even though that happened. But, I mean, we have no discernible evidence or proof that Magic Johnson or Rob Pelinka are fit to run anything basketball related at all.
Well,
and they're just in charge.
Somebody pitched the best player in the world at some point and signed him or as a free agent, right? I mean, so something went right. I think I don't know. I wasn't among the people who thought they had a shot to beat the Warriors or anything. So, you know, maybe it's relative to expectations. Obviously, I thought making the playoffs was in play. Disappointing, but I don't know. At the end of the day, like, what's going to happen with this chapter, LeBron in Los Angeles, that chapter hasn't been written yet. You know, you put together a Ball, Ingram, and the number 4 package. What can you get for that? This chapter, we just don't know yet. So, and then at the end of the day, maybe we remember this time that Magic Johnson had. Maybe we remember it as, you know, he went and had a few dinners with LeBron and sweeten that deal enough to, who knows how this thing gets written. So anyways, we don't know yet. It's one season, injuries happen. They weren't going to contend this year anyways. The window's still open for this team.
You are so optimistic. It's really adorable. You are so optimistic. LeBron is, dare I say, he's starting to get a little old perhaps. I would argue that his mind is much more on his business ventures like Space Jam 2 and Blaze Pizza and everything else that I've read from Brian Windhurst's fantastic new book. Congratulations, Brian. You don't need my endorsement, but Brian Windhurst wrote a book about LeBron. I'm going to Google it right now. LeBron book, $1 billion athlete. I can't remember what it's called. Here it is. LeBron Inc., The Making of a $1 Billion Athlete. I learned a lot about LeBron and Maverick Carter and his whole entire crew. I would argue that Magic Johnson did very little to get him to sign there because I think he already had houses in Brentwood and various places, and he doesn't want to play for the Clippers for reasons. And so just go to the Lakers, do whatever he wants, keep working on Blaze Pizza and every other investment that he has, of which, my God, that dude is invested so well in life. He is everywhere. It's insane. And I don't even think, like, I'm not going to say he doesn't care about winning because it's LeBron, but, you know, if he didn't win in LA over the next 3 years, I don't think he'd really care.
No, clearly, I mean, it's a spot to transition to other thing. I mean, that's one of the attractive things about it. Yeah, I didn't mean to say that Magic was, it's not like Magic convinced him to move to Tampa or whatever, you know, who knows where. So, I agree. LeBron didn't have a great injury-free season this season. Maybe that's not the most important thing to him right now, but I think he'd love to get a ring in any chapter in which he's still playing. And so I think he's going to show up ready. I think we put together a package, some of these young studs, this number 4 pick, we convert those into someone who's ready to go. Because I agree, the LeBron window is going to be closing soon. And that's the source of my optimism. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, the coach doesn't matter all that much. LeBron's career proves that better than anyone else's. Head coach doesn't matter all that much. The execs putting the team together certainly do matter. But, you know, even if they're flipping coins, they're as likely to make one of these decent moves as they are to make a bad move. So we'll see.
Who you want? Who you want your Lakers to go get? Plenty of options. You want Kyrie? You want that headache?
No.
You want to get the band back together?
It's a pass.
Okay. Kawhi, the Claw?
Sure. The second best performing Leonard in these playoffs.
Can I get you a Kemba Walker? Any interest there?
Pass.
Ooh, pass? Kevin? Comma Durant?
The snake?
He is a snake, and he was going at people on Twitter today.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you got to say yes, but it's kind of that one. I haven't spent a lot of time kicking that one around, but yeah, maybe.
What'd you do? Are you personally responsible for LeVar Ball going into hiding?
No, I think Patrick Sullivan bought out a lot of his stock of a lot of his clothing that he had, big baller brand. So I think he's on a beach somewhere, relaxing, living off that Patrick Sullivan sweatshirt money.
He's been awfully quiet. He had one small outburst this year, and then he disappeared again.
Yeah,
I honestly think LeBron's people probably just pull him aside and go like, "Yeah, so like if you say anything else, your kid's going to Minnesota, or what horrible cold place can we trade your kid to? Because that's what we'll do for nothing, by the way."
Yeah, at this point, I really hope the non-NBA fans have indeed turned off the podcast. We're getting into the minutiae of each player's parents. No, I mean, look, this year, I'm at this point, I'm only watching the nationally televised games. I'm no longer local to the area. I was, getting excited about, JaVale McGee's performance early in the year. It was like a weird year, Never did I think this is the year that, Steph and KD better be looking behind them this year. I mean, we just never thought that was going to come into play this year. We're at least one key trade away. Thankfully, some of those frozen rigged lottery balls that seem to always bounce in our favor, it's going to happen again. So we'll see.
All right, I'm gonna close this out with less Laker bashing. I got a couple questions for you from the audience, and if people turn off the podcast, they're lost. But I'll edit it at the beginning to make sure they know. The most interesting question I think I got was from Cyrus Gorman Gill. And how do you balance your love of old school vintage legacy with competitive Magic, Matt? You do it all. You play like every format.
Yeah, the key is being able to, first of all, you have to develop kind of a generalized skill as a Magic player. If you want to do this and be competitive in multiple formats, you have to be one of those people. I mean, again, I think we've lost the non-sports people, so I feel more free to use a sports analogy. You got to be the person who can play offense and defense, who can kind of you got to be a utility player, if it's a baseball analogy. The reason being, you're not going to get to practice a million matches before your next vintage thing or before the next Legacy 3K, the stuff that I play in locally that I find fun. So you just have to have a generalized kind of skill and experience. And when I won the PTQ that we've mentioned a couple of times, where we both were in it recently in Oakland, I had never played a game with that deck, but I had played games with similar decks. Blue Red Young Pyromancer, Twin, Blue Moon, Blue Red Delver. I mean, these are all modern decks that have a lot of cards in common. So I had this kind of muscle memory with that. That's going to help a lot. Because, yeah, there was, like, that person who sent that tweet, Cyrus, he had played a bunch with the KCI deck, and he was actually pretty well prepared for the tournament. I took a different approach. I'm going to show up and just try to snag the best list off somebody and get lucky. That's part of it. And then how do you find the balance? I mean, you never really find the balance with this kind of stuff. If you're competitive, you're always on the cusp of addiction when it comes to this stuff, and maybe spending a little bit too much time with it and then phasing in and out. So the balance for me kind of part of it's like an ebb and flow. I'll take some months off and not play very much, not even open up Arena. There's no clearing daily rewards for me. If I'm going to play it, I'll play it and maybe make Mythic. If I'm not, it's just collecting dust. So that's part of the balance. But there's no secret formula. You're just kind of making compromises with your loved ones as you go. I'm going to travel to this tournament, but not that one, etc. And at the end of the day, if you're just good enough and just lucky enough, then you get to put some results down despite playing multiple formats. It's fun. It makes it really fun because the week after the Mythic Championship, I'm going to play in some Legacy for fun. So yeah, it's been good. I'm lucky that way.
All right, last question. If you were in the MPL, or you were offered to be in the MPL, would you give up your lawyering? What do you do? Can you do both?
No way.
I didn't think so, right?
Their number wouldn't be close. The MPL alone, the streaming contract, the streaming agreement, and the MPL. If I could take just the MPL, maybe, if I had to do the streaming, no way. And if they said, hey, well, we'll double the comp, it would be no way. If they said we'll triple it, I'd say no, thank you. It's just, I actually really like my job. I like that Magic is my hobby. I feel like where I'm going to be 10 years from now in my career, especially where I'm going to be 10 years from now versus now, is radically different. So that's just almost a non-starter. Whether it was the MPL or if they said, "Hey, come work at Wizards and do this or that," like that's not me because I've got other stuff going on. But I've actually been lucky to been able to have some friends who were interested in those things and help them kind of formulate a plan. I wrote a letter of recommendation for someone's Wizards of the Coast application. And so I like having those conversations with people. Hey, what are you trying to get to, and how can we formulate a plan to get there? But I know that stuff's not my plan.
Well, it's good to know. It's good to know what you do and do not want to. What's important to you? I don't want to say do and do not want to accomplish, but you know what you want to do, and you're doing it, and you're playing Magic for fun, but you also play at a high level, and sometimes you get second in a Mythic Championship with old school Affinity, right?
Every now and then.
Yeah, every now and again. This is three PT top 8s for you?
That's correct. Three Mythic Championship top 8s.
We might be talking Hall of Famer Matt Sperling soon.
There's no guarantee they're ever going to vote someone else into the Hall of Fame, right?
Oh, I guess that's true. I forgot about that. I guess that's true.
Yeah,
I don't know. A boy can dream.
It would be amazing though if after years of saying like Chris Bakula, 3 top 8, not enough. Mark Herberholt, sorry, not sure you have my vote despite 4 top 8s. It would be amazing if all of a sudden I was just like, you know what? I think 3 top 8s ought to be enough. It really ought to be enough. You write some joke articles about the new set, you make 3 top 8s, and that sounds like a Hall of Fame resume to me.
Put him in the hall. # put Sperling in the hall. Get it started.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe if I win one of these things at that point, but no, if they open up the Hall of Fame voting again, I don't think I'll be a strong candidate, but it'll be nice to be back on the ballot.
Plus, you could write a nice article about why you should get in and why you're sick of other people getting votes. I think it'll be perfect. You're Matt Sperling. Let's see, I'm not going to Providence. When am I going to see you?
Well, I'll tell you the next time you'll hear from me is when I send you my address for that case of the katana sleeves.
Oh, that's perfect time to cut the pod. Go ahead and that's perfect time to cut the pod. We're all done. We're all done. I don't know what sleeves he's talking about, but you can get them at your local store. Maybe. And we'll see you guys later this week.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course.
You can pick the color.
So about those katana sleeves, not paying ever, Matt. You're never getting those. So sorry about that whammy. Hopefully you did enjoy the conversation between Sperling and I as we went back and forth on many different topics in Magic, and he's always a blast to talk to about those things because he is a rather intelligent individual. A couple of notes on our way out the door here before I head into work. One, you can of course find the podcast over on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, the podcast app, Patreon as well, and now over on my YouTube page as well. Working on getting a handle for that is related to me, but I've been posting it on social media, and you can certainly Google my name and YouTube, and you'll find my YouTube page, and all of my podcasts will be posted on YouTube as well, if that's the way that you like to consume such content. That's the first thing. Second thing is the wonderful apparel store, Coalesce Apparel and Design. We have a new design that is going live today, which is Tuesday. It is the Unearthly Obligations School of Finance. That is the Orzhov School that myself and my team has come up with. I think it's really cool and a lot of fun. So hopefully you do enjoy those designs, and pre-orders will start today as you are listening to this podcast over at coalesceapparel.shop. There's also the other shirts there, the anti-Mulligan shirts and zip-up hoodies, and of course the other 3 university shirts, Attack University for Gruul, Combine Biotechnic for Simic, and Secret Tech for the Dimir. Gonna actually let, most likely, you guys choose what the next design is going to be on a poll on Twitter, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And let's see, I think I've got one more pod to do this week with Joe for wrestling. Obviously, we got to review the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, which I'm sure Joe has some strong thoughts on as usual. And then I'll be headed to Louisville for SCG Louisville with Patrick, Brian Gottlieb, Jerry Thompson, Nick Miller, rest of the crew, as it's the last open weekend before SCG Con Summer, so that should be a lot of fun as well. As usual, thanks for listening. Jewel Vera is going to take us home, and be excellent to one another.
Don't tell me you thought that you had a shot, boy, you know you don't.